If you see me with glossy eyes at any point during this video, mind your fucking business, okay? Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. I'm Key. Today we are getting into the first installment of Kiki-360, which will be my mini podcast-esque segment version pillar of my channel. It's highly anticipated. I'm actually a bit nervous and don't know how to feel about making this video, just because the subject matter is something that has been ruminating inside of me for a long time. The subject today of Kiki-360 is being the token black friend. Now, for those of you that don't know what that is, I did look up a definition just because I had a conversation recently with a friend and they had no idea that this term existed, which just had me thinking, do other people know what this is? So I'm going to read that for you guys now. And it goes a little like this. So, Google Schmoogle AI overview says, a token black friend is a cultural trope and social dynamic where a black individual is the sole black person in a predominantly white social group, workplace, or media storyline, often used superficially to project an image of diversity or inclusivity. And then I'm just going to give a little more. The media origin and definition is the trope in TV and film. And then there's a real-life tokenism. The lived experience and challenges include microaggressions, mixed social perspectives, and that's it. So, for those of you who have never heard the term, that's what we're talking about today. And interestingly enough, and I didn't really mention this prior to middle school, but we can start there because my family and people that I knew as I was younger, I was being called white boy and Oreo, all of these things, which has its own effects, right? It made me just feel like I was whitewashed a lot of times, which is typical hazing, especially I think for communities of culture depending on where you are, what you're doing. So I was always a white boy to them, or just the way I talked and pronounced words. They would make fun of me. Sometimes they still do. Especially being gay, forget about it. And for some more context, I have an aunt that one time sent me a letter kind of reprimanding me about my life choices as a 12-year-old or however old I was at the time, reminding me that I was black and the kings and queens that I come from, because apparently I don't know if I was too whitewashed for her at the time. But as a young kid, you don't process those things as that. You don't really know what they're talking about. If anything, in retrospect, that kind of maybe pushed me towards other communities of people in a subconscious way. Because I wasn't being made fun of, not that way, at least. But let me back up. This video is going to be about the infancy of being the token black friend. So kind of like the origins when I became aware of this was a circumstance that I was in, and that brings us to middle school. I grew up in Middletown, Connecticut. Shout out to you, I love you, Middletown. Very diverse place, lots of people, lots of things going on. I never felt any kind of way. I always had friends, I always had people around me, and middle school was a time where our social lives really revolved around in-school happenings. We had dances, we had sports, but we were all spending time together in school. And in that setting and for that reason, you're with a mixed group of people all the time because they're not separating. It's not the 1920s. We're not separating classes by race. We weren't doing all this stuff. In Middletown, for those of you that don't know, is truly a melting pot of a place. It's a little bit of something for everyone, and there's really all kinds of representation there. So it's just not on my radar. Being a young, naive, sociable, talkative, baby gay, unbeknownst to me in the world, there was nothing to think about. But yet and still, race became a external subject matter in a different way. We decided, and by I say we, this public school system at the time decided that watching Roots in middle school was a beautiful idea. Now, for some people, some kids, some cultures, it might be, but generally speaking, the immaturity of a middle schooler, I don't know if they can handle Roots. But nonetheless, we watched Roots, and if you don't know, the main character of Roots is a slave that was tortured, chopped, screwed, all these things. His name is Kunta Kinte. And somehow, some way, that became my nickname in middle school for a brief time. Now, it was a mousy little white student that started that. I do remember his name, but I won't say it because I've moved on. I've thrived since Kunta Kinte, alright? And as a kid, you know, sometimes you don't know what you're saying. He didn't ask to be exposed to Roots, but he thought he was being funny. To his credit, there was a lot of people that joined in on the fun and the name calling, so they thought it was funny too. And for an immature group of kids, I'm sure it was. For me, it wasn't even as significant probably as it should have been, and in retrospect feels, but I was like, okay, if anything, it felt like I was just being separated from the rest of my classmates for a way. Like, there was just like, okay, I am now the butt of the joke, and I am over here on my own little island for this thing, and that was the bigger deal to me than anything else, not even the subject matter of what I was being called. But as a young kid, that's what you're more focused on your social standing, I think, unless the words and the things are very targeted to an action or something that you're doing. Sorry, ADHD and one-man production. You know how it goes on this channel. But I don't know if I said it already, but this like whole video has been like looming over me the past couple of weeks. I'm like kind of sweaty. I don't know why. I don't have a reason to be nervous, quite honestly, because these are my experiences and these shaped a lot of things. But you know what I think it is, and this is, I'll say this now, because I don't know how I'm going to edit this video. Editing these videos is going to be interesting. A lot of pausing, reflecting, re-recording, but I think the nervousness just comes from knowing that I'm talking about experiences that people may not want me to or may have forgotten about or whatever, but I think the big piece in how I'm going to be ending this whole series of videos is really, I've never communicated a lot of these things that I'm saying today for a variety of reasons. And so knowing that I'm finally just going to be adding my 2 cents into the universe, and whether they fall on the screens of somebody that I may be talking about or referencing or not, it's a big deal. Even at my big age of 32, to be talking about these things and realizing how big of a piece communication plays in a lot of things, and how much of an impact not communicating appropriately can have on one. I am one today. So, there's a lot of feelings going into this video, but I digress. Middle school, Kunta Kinte, it was the first time that became a thing. And although this is not race-related, another name that I quickly had after Kunta Kinte around the same time was Lenny from Mice of Men, which if you know anything about Lenny, Lenny is a mentally disabled grown man that does not know his strength and like snaps a rabbit's necks and like kills things. Now mind you, what I will say is that I did, and I guess now more as an adult I understand this better, know my own strength now. But there was a time where I was very physically hands-on, like slap people's butts, give them wedgies, like very like young. I was on the crew team, which will be a big part of this story, don't you worry. So we just did shit like that. So I had definitely been told and accused that like I would like slap somebody on the arm and they might go flying across the room. Okay. It's not really race related, but it was still fucked up, but I thrived. As one of my favorite drag queens says, baby, you can't shade the sun. Okay. And I knew that even in middle school. Which in retrospect, I laugh about these things. I've moved on from Lenny and Kunta long ago. I've thrived since then. But it is amazing when you think back and you put everything in retrospect, how those little pieces add up. But I just say that to say, like, middle school is just fucked up. It was a time where we're making fun of each other for the craziest things, saying the craziest things. Early 2000s where everything wasn't cancelable. We weren't even thinking like that. We were just being kids. I do believe my generation is like the last of a dying bunch. Just a certain crop of people, if you will. And if you feel a type of way, oh well. But we're in the know. And that's just how it was. But I didn't really, still in that naive space, still in that friendship space, still having social standing mean more than anything. It didn't really hit me the way it probably should have. My processing probably wasn't where it should have been, but I don't know if I should have been there because I was in middle school. I don't know if anybody has, like, if you're locked in like that, in middle school you are blessed, and it is a privilege, okay? Yeah, so that's kind of, it was what it was. Social life didn't really extend beyond school. We were all together, we were all mixed up. Then we moved on to high school. I still consider high school part of the infancy, I guess, just because we were all still young, we're all high school kids, we're all figuring out a lot about ourselves and navigating a world. But with high school it became more intentional who you hung out with, and it extended way beyond school. Now we're having parties, now we're having get-togethers at people's houses, now we're doing things, going to restaurants. So that, oh my god, going to restaurants literally on this like tone and subject matter was such a trigger to a point that I'll get to later. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, you're about to know. But high school was just, it hit different because it was different. We're getting older, we're getting more intentional as teenagers can be at that time. But the game kind of changed in that way, and it made the token black friend kind of come into focus for me. I was on the crew team all 4 years of high school. Shout out to crew. I loved crew. I was taught so much, so many lessons that I still kind of hold dear to me. I have no complaints about my high school experience, honestly, outside of some of the things I'm about to get into. High school was great for me though. I was involved, I had friends, I did sports, I did things. I was pleased with my high school experience. Like, I tell people about it and they're like, wow, I hated high school. I can't relate, and that's not to down put anybody, but I am thankful, and I say that often. I'm very thankful for the experiences I've had. My experience in high school motivated me. It kept me engaged. I was starting my journey of survival mode, which I am just now starting to escape some of the grips of, but my high school experience really did a lot for me. And the people involved in that really saved me at that time in my life. But nothing goes without an underbelly to it. But crew is when I really started to develop my group. The kind of position I was in high school, I felt like I could still be cool and talk to and interact with virtually anybody I wanted to. It wasn't that, but when you put it on a chart, when you put it on a table, these were the people that I spent the most time with, period. Like, I spent the most time. Yes, I had different groups that I could go and pop in and out of, but these are my people. This is my home base. And within this group, I had a biracial friend, half black, half white. Love her down to this day. And when it came to black shit, we could relate, and we were here, and we even down to culture, ideas, ways of being. There was a lot of relation there. But on the other side of her coin, there was a lot of reference in relation to our white friends and their cultures and their things. So on the outside in, if you ever looked, I was the token black friend of that group, just because outside of me and my friend, everybody else was white. And that was never an issue. It never really was until we started to get, I think, like, by like junior to senior year, I think just the mentality that you're in high school, you are the older people in school, things are happening internally, externally, but those were my regular people. I was like the black friend, and everybody in my life was super warm, welcoming. I was invited into people's homes. Quite frankly, I say this all the time to anybody that will listen to my stories, mostly my therapist, that like, I'm thankful. I was definitely in like youth survival mode as a teenager, but I had people that brought me into their homes, fed me. I called the parents of my friends mama, papa, all that. It's all love. Truly. A lot of them played pivotal roles in my life. And if I haven't mentioned already, like, high school for me was also motivating in the sense of the people around me were applying to college, they were doing these things, and that made it very normal for me. So I will always give props where they're due. Like, the family of my friends in high school and my friends themselves meant a lot to me. In a lot of ways still do. Things are very different now. Whew, things are very different now, but that is life. Life happens, you know? Life happens. And for a long time, gosh. For a long time, none of that shit, any of like the token black friend stuff, didn't matter, didn't exist to me, because like that's not how I navigate, that's not how I view. I've always been a person that there was a bit of a lack of closeness. I don't want to say love because that just sounds dramatic, but like just free-flowing love in like my family life, my immediate family life, like my home life. So my friends really were everything to me. And my friends that I have now still are everything to me. But I say that just to emphasize that in the lack of family support and love that I had, I genuinely was invested. I genuinely was authentic in all of those dynamics, and I think that causes a bit of a difference too. That's just, I don't say causes a bit of a difference, I think that's an unspoken player in this game. And it became clear to me by high school that there were differences in experience. I was taking microaggressions left and right, and they weren't even ill-intended a lot of the time. Some microaggressions aren't. That's why I think they're microaggressions rather than like macroaggressions, right? But it's things that like people almost can't avoid or can't help, which makes dealing with it very prickly. It's very hard, especially when you're in a place where you feel like you're getting everything you're not getting elsewhere and that you should be getting elsewhere. It makes it hard to advocate or communicate, for me at least, in those moments. So as I developed my deeper friendships and I was with this group of people and I was that token black friend, it was so layered and it was so unspoken. And unfortunately, if you're not able to advocate for yourself in a situation and you don't have people that are able to identify and address and follow up certain things, then nothing gets talked about. And that's just human nature, that's how things go. And doesn't make it right, wrong, it's just how it kind of was. You know, that's how it was. But it was the first time that I realized there was a difference here. The fact that we're always at my friend's house and never at mine. The ones that realizing that, oh, I know your family, your brother, your sister, you know nothing about my family. You've never met them. It adds another layer and element to being the token black friend. The separation on even a minor level, it gets louder for those reasons. And depending on who you're around, it gets harder to address and communicate and kind of parse through. But yeah, I'm sure if you have a person of color in your life, if you are not a person of color, you might have had these conversations. If you're a person of color, you know what I mean. There's certain things you can't even put into words. And I don't want to get lost in the feeling of and the depth of being the token black friend, which might sound crazy, but it's, I almost bit my tongue off. It's so deep, it's like the ocean. Like, I want to navigate this by certain experiences. which let's start with the N-word, because I was a well-known N-word hater at one point in my high school life. Now, it's like my birthright. Like, I'm not even monetized right now, so... So I was on a campaign. I hated the N-word. I didn't want to hear it. If you said it around me, I would go crazy. It would get physical. I'd bring Lenny back. It wasn't a good thing. I didn't like it. I found it to be disrespectful. But at some point along the way, I decided, I think I just gave up on my battle, which honestly, the next point that I'm going to get to or experience kind of might explain that, but I'll just say this. I got to a point where I did not care, and my white friends began to say nigga, and they said it just as much, if not more, than I did. And for me, we were friends. If you will, I gave them the pass. But it's interesting to me how that goes. I used to watch Wendy Williams all the time, and she would say, like, I would, like, talk to my son about having, like, white friends, because at a certain point, they get to go grow up and be white again. And you're still a little black boy over here doing whatever. And it very much gives that. I'll say it this way. I'm not on certain social media platforms right now, but you could go back and look, or should I say listen, and you can hear nigga being uttered in certain things on the internet. So, it's one of those things. It was what it was, but I had white friends that said nigga more than I did. And it was just normal. In retrospect now, it's anything but. But like I said, for many reasons, that was the norm. And that's just what it was.